Hello, Robert.
Well, hey, buddy. It's so nice that after we hear a nice prayer,
right,
you don't have to hear about someone talking about being on a toilet, using that as your meditation.
Oh, man. You know what? I went through several trying to get something different.
The more things change, the more they stay.
Yeah, they are. It's
good.
You know, the buddy down the street that had the podcast, he actually has a band called Harbor Drive. We're going to work together to get something running. But you know what? I'm going to keep it simple anyways. You know, when we first started this podcast, I was all about making something fancy and pretty in the very beginning. And you know what? It is what it is. It's about the podcast now. How are you?
I'm doing good, buddy. How you doing?
I'm well, buddy.
Hey, can I borrow that when I leave? I'm gonna go through that
book
for the international.
Yeah.
Paul, sorry, our guest.
Bring him in. Bring him in. Come on in.
Our guest. What is your name?
Paul Raines.
Okay.
Well, he even went with the last name.
Yeah. How many have you been to any international? I've not yet been to an international convention.
No, I have not.
See, so
So that was quite the experience. In fact, you know what? I want you guys to hear this real fast. Hold on a second.
Oh yeah, that was experience.
Oh my gosh, this right here is by far one of my favorite things that I heard. Hold on a second. That was 40,000 people saying the Serenity Prayer.
Sounds like like an airplane above you guys too.
You know what? But that's the way it sounded inside that stadium.
Yeah.
It was just, you know, there were several things that were done inside the stadium. I mean, they said the Serenity Prayer was one, and the guy saying Hallelujah inside there, which I have it recorded too. But my buddy Doug was sitting next to me, and he had recorded the Serenity Prayer, and all you could hear on his was him saying it. You couldn't really hear everything else. And then
was that the guy with Down syndrome? The Doug with Down syndrome you were talking about? I thought that was an inside joke.
Dougie P that traveled with me.
Yeah.
My travel partner. Yeah, I warned him before we travel. I'm a high maintenance traveler, man. Between my snacks at bedtime.
My favorite part of every meeting is the end when we all get up, hold hands, and we do the Lord's Prayer. I mean, because I just get to watch in all the similarities, but all the differences in all but, you know,
that right there.
Goal.
They didn't close that one with the Lord's Prayer.
And you guys didn't do a sobriety countdown, which usually happens at every whatever.
They didn't. They may have done it at the old timers meeting. I didn't go to that one. Jason was supposed to go to that one, and you know, he lost his dog while we were there, and that was just a horrific. And
tell me about it.
You tell me about it. You picked him up off the side of the road. You know,
two of them. Paul did here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were there it was 4th of July, and you know, I have a black lab too, and you can shoot guns around him all you want, but fireworks drive him nuts, right? It just drives him crazy. And it was, we get a phone call from Jason says, hey, he's running late. His dog got out and got killed. And I'm like, oh shit. And, so we get there, and him and Kim finally show up, and they were pretty distraught, right?
Oh yeah.
And then I find out that you're going to pick the dog up on the side of the road, and I'm like, I had to call you. I'm like, dude, what a friend you are. I mean, what a friend you are to go and do that. I mean, just have to call, and then come to find out you didn't even pick up the right dog.
No, he called me back at 4:00, Paul. No. Someone had found because it was a black lab, you know, and his son had went out and saw the scars, the same scars on the nose, but this dog was not in good shape. But yeah, and then 4:00 in the afternoon, that was 7 in the morning. 4 in the afternoon, Jason calls me back, Rob, we got the wrong dog. Rooster was over on Warnerville and 120. So I made another trip. And
poor Jason had to go through that twice. Right? Had to go through that twice. And then, Rooster, rest in peace, brother. But yeah, he had him cremated, and man, that's the worst part to when you lose a dog. It's just horrible, especially one like that.
And that's a sobriety dog. You know, he got
You know. Oh, really?
Yeah, he got.
I did not hear that part of it
because he took Wayne over to Aaron's house when Aaron still had Dolly, the chocolate, and bred, so he could get one of Wayne's offspring, which was Rooster, about 4 years ago. Yeah, amazing dog. And Jason put a lot of love into that, like he does everything else. A lot of love into that animal. So that sucks.
Anyway, so we're going to talk some more about the international convention on the next episode, but we are going to get to Paul. We're going to hear some stuff about Paul. I've gotten to hear a little bits and pieces of your story, and the amounts that I've heard, I'm like, I want to get him in here. I want to hear the whole thing.
He's got a great story. I've got to hear it a few times.
We got to talk a little bit before you showed up, so there's some parts of it I'm excited to get to about what he's doing now. So tell us about yourself, Paul.
Well, first of all, thank you for asking me to come and do this. This is
Our pleasure.
I feel like it's an honor to be able to share, and certainly anytime we can share where somebody might hear this and it might make a difference is
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the whole premise of what we do, right?
Absolutely.
And we get people reaching in. Well, like the guy I'm going to ask you the question. He's from Denver. It's amazing what God does with this stuff. He just takes it and
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. It's funny because family members of mine were praying for me in my worst and and I didn't know it. I mean, I didn't know it. And one brother actually came after me when I was hiding out in the backwoods of North Carolina.
That's the part I've heard.
And he found me, and I don't know how he found. We were, it was a Saturday afternoon. We were down by a little lagoon or creek or whatever, and just drinking, raising hell, and jumping off of a rope swing into the water, all that stuff, and I mean, first of all, where I lived was back in the middle of nowhere, but this was really back in the middle of nowhere beyond that. And he found me. He came down there, and all of a sudden I turned around, there's my brother from Wisconsin. And I'm like, Joe, what are you doing here? And he says, I came to talk to you. And,
how old were you at this time, Paul?
I was, 29, somewhere around there. And, and we talked for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I was like, well, thank you for wasting your time, but, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. This is me now. And I had pretty much resigned myself to the fact that I was of no use to anybody, my wife, my kids. And really what I was doing was running away to die. And I had every intention of drinking and drugging myself to death, and it just wasn't happening fast enough, And I tell this story. I worked with another guy. We were building fences, farm fence, stuff like that out in the country. And Virgil was like probably in his mid-60s, and he was still working, right? I mean, this guy would get up at the crack of dawn. He'd go out and work, and every night I would hear him screaming bloody murder because he would wake up in DTs.
Oh, wow.
And when he got his bottle, he was fine. Wow. I mean, he lived in a tiny one of those little tiny camp trailer things. And a number of us lived right on site at the fence company. It was out in the country, so the guy had a little building off to the side, and he let Virgil, park his camper back there. But it dawned on me that I might not die that fast. That I could end up.
You might be Virgil.
I might be Virgil. I might be going on and on and on and on like that. And that really gave me pause to stop and think. Well, I came up here, I was thinking, my uncle, my mother's brother was a street drunk in Denver, Colorado. And this guy had 8 kids. And I remember my dad taking groceries over to their house because he was just so irresponsible. And this guy ended up in a state institution there in Colorado. And wet brain is what they called it, right? And he was just totally, the only time I ever really saw him after many years was we brought him to a family reunion, and he was just out. He was just totally out of it. He didn't know anybody.
Were you sober at that time or not?
Oh, no. Okay. I was a teenager.
Oh, okay.
Around there.
Where did you grow up, Paul?
Well, I was born in Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
As I mentioned, my dad worked for
one of the greatest songs in the world, Wichita Lineman, baby. Glenn Campbell.
For Phillips Petroleum. He moved us to Memphis, Tennessee. We lived there for a few years, and then got transferred to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Okay. Lived there for about 5 years, and then he had the option to go to Saudi Arabia or Charlotte, North Carolina.
Whoa, buddy!
And he picked,
what year was that?
This was 1971.
Oh yeah, he'd been better off to stay here.
Yeah. So we moved to Charlotte, and that's pretty much where the family ended up at. I'm the 6th of 7 kids, and I didn't really have a bad childhood growing up, other than the fact that I had a hard time adjusting everywhere I went. I was north to south, south to north, and I always had an accent wherever I went, and I always got made fun of.
Yeah.
But it was also hard to fit in because, kids that grow up around one another their whole life and everything, I'm coming in the 9, 10, 12, 13 years old, and trying to fit in, and I never did. When I got to Charlotte, one of the things that I had that became clear is that I could put on a persona of a bad kid,
Okay.
And that was how I got my attention. And that's pretty much where a lot of the trouble really started when I was about 13 years old, and it was in Charlotte, and I was, what normal kids do. I mean, it's not abnormal for kids to experiment with like marijuana, alcohol, stuff like that. It's what happens to us when we have that disposition to get addicted to this stuff. And I clearly remember started drinking intentionally at about 13.
It's funny how you say that, though.
No, yeah, with intention.
Yeah, I don't. I've heard people say that before, and I'm like, and it took me a little bit to realize what that means, and I exactly know what it means now.
Oh, yeah, we do. We're wired that way.
Because I drunk. I mean, I had sips of beer and stuff with my parents, and my parents were not big drinkers. I mean, every once in a while I'd see my dad come home from work, and him and my mom would split a can of beer.
All right, I've heard you say that before.
Wow.
And to me that was and to me that was like I look back on that. But then later on in life, my mother, pretty much after she retired, she was just a classic story out of the big book where she just, carpet slippers came out. She started drinking. And I watched her drink herself to death. I mean, literally. And she ended up having a stroke and ended up the last couple of years of her life just in really bad shape. But going back to the, starting off, I started drinking intentionally at 13, any chance I could possibly get, mostly on the weekends. But then it became like every weekend. I mean, it was the mission of the weekend for somebody to get.
So you didn't have any problem getting it?
Oh no! I mean, we always
a wet county.
Oh yeah,
was there dry counties there too?
Well, in North Carolina, they have what they call ABC stores. They're state regulated liquor
like
stores,
Hawaii.
but you could buy beer and wine in in a grocery in a 7-Eleven or something like that. So, obviously, I got sick off of Boone's Farm more than once. And
so now, do you know Dawson? We've had Dawson on the show. He
from Primary Purpose.
From Primary Purpose. His and my wife loves him because Dawson's dad was the inventor of Boone's Farm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Damn him.
Yeah.
Damn him. That's funny. That's funny.
No, it was, things were going in a bad direction. Again, I mean, I came from what I think society would consider a functional family. My oldest brother fought in Vietnam, came back just totally messed up in the head. And I watched him. That man drank from the time he woke up in the morning to the time he went to bed, and you would have never known that he was drinking because he was always just.
Kind of reminds you when my wife said she's never saw me drunk.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you drink that much, and and I used to look at other people and think, oh, they got a drinking problem. I never looked at myself.
We don't.
Hell no.
But my drinking, accelerated by other things, really took off. And I mean, by the time I was 25 years old, I was at the point where I was quitting jobs because I was afraid I was going to get fired.
Oh,
okay. I mean,
you were ahead of the curve.
I was an assistant manager at McDonald's in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and I remember finding those speakeasies that stayed open all night illegally in South Carolina, and there were times when I had to open the store at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't done drinking until 3:30.
Yeah.
And so I'd go open the store, and I'd crash in one of the booths, and that's where staff would find me when they came in.
Oh wow!
Where's the boss?
I'm drunk, passed out, and I mean that's one of the jobs I had to quit before I got fired. But I worked in the food service industry for a number of years, and certainly in the they say this about a lot of different industries: food service, construction, a lot of drunks and stuff in that, but. I did that until I couldn't do it anymore, until I just could not manage to keep a job. And that's when things started going downhill. That's when I ran away from home and went to around Greensboro and decided it was it. I was just, that was my fate, and there was nothing I could do about it.
So when you say that, you consciously remember just saying, fuck it.
Yep.
Really?
Well, that's after you were married with children,
and there was a 19-year-old female involved as well.
Okay.
So I mean,
there it is.
Yeah,
there it is.
Yeah. So I, but I wasn't. My marriage to my first wife was just. I don't know how to explain it. It was not a marriage. I mean, we did nothing but fight. Nothing but. I mean, it was.
Was she a drinker too?
No.
Oh,
no,
really? Okay.
No. No, but her dad was a drunk, and he had serious mental health issues and things like that. And she grew up in a really abusive household. So it was no wonder she put up with me.
Okay.
Any normal woman would have left me or shot me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was normal for her.
For her, it was normal. So, but for me, it was like, I was just a restless, irritable, discontent drunk, and I could never find my place. I could never find contentment. But one of the things I did come to realize is that my life wasn't going anywhere. You know, I had tried to commit suicide twice by the time I was 25 or so.
How?
I joined the Navy when I had just turned 17.
Navy man.
To try and get my life turned around. I got in there and I didn't realize it at the time, but I suffer from depression. And I got in there and I was starting to have trouble. I was starting to have these severe pains in my chest where I couldn't even breathe. And I went to the doctor and he said it was anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah.
And it was intercostal. The muscles between my ribs were inflamed. And he prescribed me Valium. Well, I'm going to an A school learning how to as an aviation boatswain's mate, learning how to work on catapults and arresting gear on an aircraft carrier. And I'm thinking, and this is their answer? They're giving me Valium. I don't think this is safe, right? Anyway,
this is mid to late 70s?
Yeah, mid-70s, 73, 74. And the one thing I loved about the service is 17 years old, I could walk into any club on base. I could drink as much as I want, you know, and my heroes were the lifers that drank their beer out of pitchers. You know, but this particular night, I was really, this was the weird thing is I was at peace with leaving this earth. I was convinced that this was the answer. It was not a state of depression or anything. It was a state of acceptance. And I had accepted the fact that this was just not my time here and I needed to go. And I took that, and I had not taken that Valium. I took that whole bottle of Valium and I took it all at one time. It was 35 milligram Valiums. And I went out and I started drinking, and I started drinking hard. And I don't remember what happened next. What I do remember happened next is I was laying on the top of my bunk. I was floating away from my body. I could see Navy corpsmen over me doing CPR, and I could hear them clearly say, "He's not breathing and his heart's not beating."
That's an OBE, out of body experience.
Yep, yep. And I kept floating and floating and floating, and it was in darkness, and and I was looking down at my body, and I was hearing and seeing what was going on, and all of a sudden,
chills.
A fear of panic came over me, and I thought. I realized I'm dead. Here's the other thing, is I also realized I still had thought and I still could feel emotion.
Wow.
And it was weird. It was like, okay, I wanted out of this. It doesn't look like I'm getting out of it. It looks like I'm taking it with me. And in an instant, I was back in my body.
Wow.
But my body was like a piece of clay. I couldn't move a muscle. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. They took me to the infirmary. And the two corpsmen that were there, they had to wake up a doctor at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he came in, and and this was really funny. They smelled marijuana on my breath. I didn't smoke pot. I was never a pot smoker. I didn't like it. I never sought it out.
Same with me. We got a lot in common. A lot more than I've known Paul for 14 years now.
So
I love this.
Somewhere along the way that night, I stopped and smoked pot with somebody that I didn't remember. But the point being is, I laid there and I couldn't move a muscle, and I knew what had happened to me. I was conscious of that, and I could hear these guys talking about, let's throw him out in the snow. He's just trying to get out. He's just trying to get discharged from the Navy. And I if I could have moved, I would have jumped up and I would have tried to kick their ass. I probably wouldn't have done it, but it made me. I remember it made me very angry to hear that, because it was like, if you guys knew what had just happened to me. Right. But anyway, the things, I ended up getting sent to, actually I ended up going AWOL, because I didn't want to be on the ship when it took off. I got onto the Kennedy on the aircraft carrier, and it was getting ready to go over to the Mediterranean. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this, because I was already starting to butt heads with my superiors. I mean, the guy that I was working for, his nickname was Cats, because he worked on the catapults. Mm-hmm. And he was an asshole, and I was like, I can't do this, man. I just took off one day, and I came back to Charlotte, and I was there for about 3 months until I got into some trouble with some drugs and overdosed and wound up in the hospital, and they found out who I wasn't where I was supposed to be.
And he was AWOL, or we called it in the Navy, it was UA, unauthorized absence. Yeah.
Well, I purposely left everything that they issued me on the ship, which is technically a deserter.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it was during the Vietnam conflict was not yet over. Yeah. So I was thinking, oh, are they going to put me in front of a firing squad or what? I was very fortunate. I got court-martialed, and I got a general under honorable conditions, which actually kind of blew me away.
That blows me away.
And
Explain that.
Well, they decided that I was immature.
Okay.
They called me immature, and realized that I had probably some serious psychological issues and difficulties. This is funny because when I was when I first came back and they put me in a hospital. I think this was my first AA meeting, is that they asked me to sit in with this group of guys. And I remember we were sitting in a circle, and I remember we were talking about stuff around drugs and alcohol. and now that I look back on it, it was probably a recovery meeting, that I was sitting in at 17 years old, and I didn't even realize it.
If there was coffee, it was an AA meeting.
It was coffee. Yeah. But I got out. I came home. I decided I was gonna do something with my life. I went back to a community college. I started getting into, I wanted a degree in music, and I started doing theater, so that's what I did for 5 years. Absolutely loved it. Never got a degree in anything, not a 2-year degree in anything, and just screwed around. But by that time, the drinking, I figured if I put the drugs down, then it was okay to drink, right? But the drinking just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it started becoming, it was daily. It was drinking to get drunk daily. I never took a day off from drinking, even when I was sick. And there were times when, when I was between jobs or something like that and money was hard to come by. I tell this story funny. There was a commercial on TV about there's something about an Aqua Velva man.
Yes.
Yep.
I drank that shit.
Oh my!
I drank it, for the alcohol content. It was nasty. I mean, but I forced it down. And then I drank cooking sherry, which was also very nasty. It was my parents' refrigerator. But just an example, I would go to any lengths to get alcohol in my body. It didn't seem to matter. And that's when I got a DUI. Here's the funny thing is I clearly remember one night getting on my knees and praying and saying, God, if I've got a problem, show it to me and please help me. Right. I was unemployed. I was being like a stay-at-home dad. We had 3 kids at the time.
That's with the 19-year-old.
No.
Oh, you got married after that.
The 19-year-old's what he ran with.
Okay.
No, I never. That ended
Okay. Sorry.
But no, we were living because we could never afford anything. We were either living with her parents or my parents. At this point, we were living with my parents. And I got on my knees and prayed. And probably within a week, I went out to a bar with a friend of mine to see a band that we liked, and I got a DUI.
Oh boy.
And praying to God for a sign.
Right.
No, that wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize that. So, but things just started progressively getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, it came to that point where I ran away from home and did all that stuff. And came back to Charlotte after a huge fight with this 19-year-old girl. She slashed my tires and broke my windshield. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. I didn't necessarily want to come back home to Charlotte, but I did, and I called my parents and I said, "Look, I think I need help." They tried to get me into a treatment center. The beds were full. They got me into a psychiatric ward of a local hospital, which okay,
You qualified.
yeah, most definitely. And I was there for about 3 or 4 days. I started detoxing, and really, I mean, the devil was coming out of me and all this other stuff, And I was like, I don't want to be here. And I'd tell the psychiatrist, when are you going to let me out of here? And he said, I want you to talk to somebody. And he brought somebody from AA in. And that person sat down with me on a Sunday afternoon. And she was showing me the progression of the disease, the jails, institutions, and death. I'd been to jail a couple of times by this time. I was sitting in an institution, and as my story before, I had already died.
Right.
And I sat there and honestly looked and convinced, in my mind, I looked at this person. I said, "That's not me. That's not me." And
Denial.
Oh, it was a step below denial. It was delusion, and But I came out of there thinking, okay. Something's got to change. I went home and I told my wife that I'm going to stop drinking. And that lasted about 2 days. And then I said, well, I'm just going to get a 12-pack, and I'm going to make this 12-pack last. Well, by about the 3rd day, it was that there was a 12-pack a day at least, right? And things just kept getting progressively worse. I don't know. When I'd gotten the DUI, I was court ordered to go to AA meetings, and I remembered. I guess I remembered where some of them were, and I don't remember recalling exactly how I recalled this particular meeting. But I walked into it. It was a Monday night meeting. It was a speaker meeting, and there was a man up there talking, and he was telling stories about how he was an engineer, and he had gone from having a reputable place in this company to working in the basement, washing rags. And that he, on his way home, he used to walk past this bar before he got really problematic, and he would look in and he would see these people in this bar and these guys down at the end of the bar cavorting with women and stuff like that. And he'd pass judgment on them. He said in the end he was sitting in that bar, and he had lost some of his teeth, and so he used to use those plastic true cigarette filters and stuff up in there so he looked like he had teeth. And that made me laugh like hell. And the other people in the meeting were laughing too, and I was like, holy crap, And I still didn't associate with me being
you weren't that bad.
That bad, right?
Right.
But anyway, I really related to this guy, and they pass out chips at these meetings, at every meeting. And the white chip is the surrender chip, and
it's like the 24-hour chip.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember walking up, and I just started crying like a baby. And I couldn't figure. Not me, tough guy, Mr. Tough Guy. It's like I'm standing there crying in front of all these people, and I couldn't stop. And it was like the stories about Vietnam vets talking about getting their feelings out and how they were afraid they'd be afraid that they couldn't stop the emotion of crying. But that started the long journey of my resistance to recovery.
Okay,
I call it that because I did not. I came kicking and screaming. It was like I didn't.
Okay, we haven't got to living in the car yet.
No, well, it was right along that time that I was. It was around that time that I was living in my car because no, it was actually right before that. Because I'd gotten to the point after I came home, that period of time, about 6 months in there, my wife and I couldn't get along, and I couldn't quite stop drinking, and that's when I started. I just packed everything I owned, which took about 5 minutes, and I threw it in my car, and I was just going from park to park around Charlotte, and I was doing day jobs. I was doing day labor jobs to get enough money to drink, and that was pretty much my life for a while. And I'd always get afraid that the cops were going to come and arrest me for vagrancy and stuff like that. But it didn't. And that's kind of what led up to me getting to that meeting, and where I'd gotten to the point where this just can't go on like this. But this guy was very open-minded. He was about 15 years sober. He had been diagnosed with cancer. He was supposed to be he had been given 6 months to a year to live. And we formed a relationship. This man taught me things that my own parents never taught me, And he would hit me between the eyes with stuff, and he called out. We'd be driving to a meeting, and I'd be looking out the window, and he looked up one day. I was looking at we were passing by a bar or something, and he looked at me and goes, "You know what?" He says, "You're just as addicted to excitement as you are anything else." And I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?"
Yeah.
I finally realized what it meant because, it was always had to be drama in my life. I was having difficulty, I was trying to re-engage with my wife and, things like that. I was going back to church and actually was a Sunday school teacher for a while.
Wow.
It was really weird. I taught, I sang in a choir and, I did all this stuff to try and be a good reentry into society and all this stuff. But at the same time, I realized that I had to do something more productive with my life. So, first of all, I started a business. I had a landscape and lawn service business with a buddy of mine who I grew up with, and we were growing this business, and it was going well. It was going okay, and we had actually hired somebody, and we had equipment. We were getting jobs, and it got to the point where we couldn't continue to grow the company and draw salaries out of it. So I decided I was going to get a job. A friend of mine in the program suggested that I go to work at this treatment center, which was a very well-known treatment center there in Charlotte. And that's where I started in healthcare.
Wow.
What's your sobriety? What is the listeners know your sobriety date?
August 25th, 1988.
Okay.
So,
right before I graduated high school.
Yeah.
No, right after I graduated high school.
So this was along in late mid 1989 or so. I think early, maybe spring, summer 1989. I went to work in this treatment center, and I realized that I picked up a copy of the New England Journal of Medicine, and it was talking about how the field of recovery did not have enough people with lived experience and education.
There we go.
There were plenty of people in there with lived experience. and the field was being taken over by people with education. Okay.
Right.
And so, the mix of those two things, it was not as prevalent as it probably needed to be. And it was at that point I decided I was going to go back to school. And I decided I was going to be a substance use counselor until I realized how much money they made, because I was paying child support at that time. My wife and I separated, and I was paying child support. So along in there somewhere, one of the instructors said, "Have you ever considered going to nursing school?" Me? No, I never. No, right. Me a nurse? No, never. That. But at some point, I said, "Okay, I'll do this." And I'd never graduated high school. I'd gone through the 11th grade 3 times. I have a GED. And I thought, I don't know if I've got the smarts and the brain power to do this. And certainly the stick-to-itiveness to do it, because I was just, I was all over the map. I thought it was ADD or something. I don't know. But I went back to school and I started taking the courses. And I realized very quickly that I had not circumvented anything from high school. I had to end up taking all those courses that I missed. Yeah. So my first year at that community college was
high school. Was your
that.
Senior year.
Yeah. And I did that, and I was going to get a 2-year degree in nursing. Somebody from one of the local colleges came out and was giving a talk, and I thought, it does sound like a better deal to get a 4-year degree in a BSN rather than just an RN. And and they were talking about all the doors that would open and all that stuff. And once again, I thought, I don't think I've got. And you had to qualify. I mean, you applied, and they had hundreds and hundreds of applications, and they only accepted like 100 of those a year. Yeah. And I got in, and I got into this, and I did this, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I mean, there were times when I just wanted to give up. I wanted to run away screaming, and because at the same time I was still having to work and do the child support thing. So I was working 2 jobs and going to school.
Wow. You had a full life.
Yep. I was working construction.
How much AA were you?
Very
so
much.
There was full job, AA, and
recovery,
to school.
all of that, yeah. And there for a while. I mean, I was one of those people that I thought, meeting every day kind of a thing, or at least, minimum 4 or 5 times a week, right? But when I got into all that, doing the school and working and all that stuff, my meetings were 2 or 3 a week. Fortunately, I still worked at that treatment center, so I got to take the patients. I got to take the patients out to meetings and
get your own meeting.
Get to drive the van, stuff like that. So that worked out really well. Along the way, ended up getting divorced. Stayed out of relationships for about 12 years. During that time, I was again still working, trying to my career was moving along, and decided. I sat there for about an application for graduate school sat on my kitchen table for about a year. I had never lived by myself before, ever, and I was living by myself, and things were going well. I was getting comfortable with myself. I was getting comfortable with not being in sick relationships with women.
So you had about 4 years sobriety right here.
It was about. At the time before I went to graduate school, I was about 7 years, 7 years somewhere. It took me longer to get through school than most people. It took me 5 years to get that 4-year degree, and then I took a year off and was just working. And I was still working in the treatment field, so I was working at the treatment center. I finally went back to school and went to graduate school, and I'm so glad I did, because it was so much easier. I mean, I tell people, I always thought it was, graduate school, It wasn't. It was fun.
Hard part was over.
It was fun. It was fun because you were taking things that, that really allowed you to develop thinking and, and process and things like that. So I enjoyed that, and I had really great instructors, and I ended up with what's called a clinical nurse specialist in psychiatric mental health nursing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right out of school, I was offered 2 different jobs. One was academic, was teaching, and the other was a director of nursing position. I thought, wow, they're offering me this big, management position. Come to realize that Centers for Medicare and Medicaid require that if you're going to be a director, that if you have a program, a mental health or a substance use program, they require that person to have a master's degree in psych mental health, or an equivalent of 5 years of experience and management experience. So, I mean, those people, I guess, were hard to come by, and that's probably why that position was offered, and I took it. And from there, man, the trajectory of my career just skyrocketed, and I can't tell you, more than once people were like, "You're in over your head. You don't know what you're doing," and I was like, "The door opens. I'm gonna walk through it. There's a reason. There's a reason for this happening." Yep. I came to I worked with child and adolescent long-term care for a number of years. I worked as a prison nurse for a while. I mean, don't ask me why. I mean, these things just presented themselves, and I was like, sure, why not? I'll do it. One of the things, interesting things I found out about working long-term adolescent, and then in prison nursing is that a lot of these guys in prison were the same adolescent temperament that I had worked with.
I've heard you share that before.
They had they'd never grown up. They'd never learned how to cope with life. And so their coping skills were very much, and I started relating to some of the stuff I was learning along the way in school about, we talk about we're mentally and emotionally about the same age we are in recovery when we stop drinking. That was me. I mean, I was 13 years old when I got in here in a 30-year-old body, and it was not comfortable. But through the experience of education and in the workplace, there was just so much I was learning about all this stuff, And again, the door started opening, and I had an opportunity to take over a program in Eastern Tennessee, and it was for the same company. And I got up there, beautiful. I'm a mountains kind of guy. I love the mountains. I love to go hiking. I mean, that's just, to me, that's where I'm close to God. Just being in that area. And we got up there, and I was telling Larry earlier that, my wife and I started getting, after about a year and a half, 2 years, we started getting cabin fever. We had a beautiful house on almost 5 acres.
Second wife.
Second wife. Yeah. First of all, I've raised Catholic, and I managed somehow to get my first marriage annulled. Yeah, mostly because I thought that would please my mother, because she didn't talk to me for 5 years after I got divorced my first wife. But that's here and there. Yeah. But my second wife, and we're still married today.
How far sober were you when you got married?
Oh gosh, we got married in 2001, so 88.
So you had
13 years.
Yeah. Did she know that you were in the program?
Oh, yeah. It was so funny. We started dating, and we were going out places, and I was running into people. She goes, how do you know all these people? I was like, I'm not going to get into it. But,
anonymity?
Yeah. She finally, she knew. Yeah. And one of the things I told her from the very start is that my program is going to come first.
Amen, brother.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to go to meetings. If you don't like it, tell me now, because this is that's not going to change. And she's very accepting of that. I mean, she didn't seem to have a problem, and still doesn't have a problem with that. But
so anyway, you're in the hills of Tennessee.
In the hills of Tennessee, got cabin fever. She started sending my resume out.
Mama started.
I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. She sent it to a place she thought was in Colorado, and my mother had been born in Colorado. I loved Colorado. It was a beautiful, beautiful state, and I was like, yeah, I could live in Colorado. It was a Management Recruiters of Colorado was the company she sent it to, and it turns out that the job was here in California. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I got on the phone for my first phone interview and started talking to these people. But I was so impressed by what I was hearing from this leadership team in Modesto at the Stanislaus County Behavioral Health Department that I thought, we might be able to do that. And we did. We ended up packing up everything we had in a U-Haul truck, and I had my kids from my first marriage. Three of the four of them actually came with us and helped us move. My wife and I had two little ones. They were like a year and 2 years. They were born about a year apart, so a year and 2 years. And we drove all the way across the country, ended up in Riverbank, California, and started working for Stanislaus Behavioral Health. I was telling Larry, I came to work to be. I was hired to take over as a director of nursing at the facility there. But the administrator position was open, and one of the people from HR said, you want to apply for that? I was like, I'm not qualified for that. I don't have the experience, and there were like 11 other people that had applied. All of them had more years of experience running facilities, and half of them had PhDs, and I thought, there's no way. Besides, the person that I was coming to replace, the director of nursing, was supposedly a shoo-in for this position, right? I got the job, and all of a sudden I was her boss. Right? She didn't like that very much, but again,
God's got a plan.
Yeah, and it's through the things that I've learned in this program that I've learned how to deal with those types of situations. And I mean, just the
have you found that where God wants you, He's going to put you?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, this is funny because I worked for Stanislaus Behavioral Health about a year and a half. They had an arrangement with Tenet Corporation to work under their license and accreditation, and Tenet wanted out of that. and they eventually got out of it. And I was not going to work for a for-profit mental health, and I did not want to work for Tenna Corporation. I just didn't. I mean, I'd sat in their board meetings and things because we were part of them technically, and I sat in their board meetings, and I just didn't like that corporate mindset, and the things that
big difference. I've worked for big corporations and I've worked for private owned. It's big difference.
So I made the decision I was not going to, and they didn't. And once that change happened, the county really didn't have a place for me anymore. So I started looking for a job, and a recruiter actually called me and asked if I'd be interested in this facility up in Stockton. It was Catholic Healthcare West at the time, and it was a much smaller facility, and the position had been open about a year, and I put two and two together. And I said, I don't know if this is a good career move or not, But I wasn't really. I mean, I was traveling the state looking for another job, and nothing was really coming along. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. I went to work there, and the person that I was reporting to was the CEO of the bigger hospital, St. Joe's Medical Center, and I clearly remember about 2 months in, it was like I felt like I was a department of their hospital, and I wasn't being. I mean, I was a president of the hospital, right? And I thought, there came along with that, there came some respect, and not so. And I was sitting there in his office one day, and I said, Don, when do I get to be a real hospital president? And he said, well, when you make a significant contribution, either monetary, financial or otherwise to the system. And then he looked at me and says, your ticket's not punched yet. And immediately the thought was, dude, you don't have my ticket. To your point, it was like, you don't have my ticket. Trust me, because all these doors that have opened that I've walked through, they were there, and it was nothing that I did to really deserve or bring this stuff on. And it was funny because he retired about a year ago. But about 3 years ago, I actually told him that story. I did. I said, Don, I didn't tell you this at the time, but I wanted to let you know that you didn't have my ticket. The man upstairs has my ticket, and that's the way it's been. And over the years, I've been there 18, almost 19 years now.
California Avenue?
Yeah.
Stockton, yeah. That's where I had my surgeries.
And we, and I've been able to I've been given a lot of autonomy to do a lot of things, and I've really gotten involved. Very involved advocacy-wise at the state level and even at the national level. I've been on the American Hospital Association Regional Policy Board. They've got nine regions across the country, and I was the mental health delegate on that for a number of years. Wow. I'm on their National Behavioral Health Committee now, and also sit on the state's task force, the behavioral task force of the state of California. So every opportunity I have, and I won't keep my big mouth shut about something if I feel like it's it's like you guys don't understand how this works.
That's why you're there.
Yeah, and it's it's largely the problems that we run into in our society are it's all about money. It's all about who your payer is, and behavioral health is the redhead stepchild of healthcare. And I've always equated behavioral health and substance use disorders as one area because they're inextricably linked. You can't pretty much you can't have a substance use disorder and it not be some relative to a mental health condition of some sort, depression, whatever, and vice versa. So anyway, over the years, my career has really been taking off. We Catholic Healthcare West became Dignity Health, and now it's a much larger organization called Common Spirit Health, which is a house of brands. So Dignity Health, Catholic Health Initiatives in the Midwest, Virginia Mason, Franciscan in the Northwest, and we've all come together, Centura in Colorado, we've all come together to form this big company called Common Spirit. It's 150 some odd hospitals. And somehow I talked my way into being the senior vice president for behavioral health for the whole system. So again, doors that have opened, and right now I'm being given the opportunity to develop strategy for the entire system. Wow. Develop a behavioral health service line, which is Can
I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
How much does this impact your thinking? I know that.
When you say this, he's talking about the big book in our program.
I'm pointing at my favorite, but
your scattered pages.
It's awesome.
Every single day. Every single day, I run into things that I'm just. emotionally up and down about, because I run into resistance from people that don't understand behavioral health and really want. I'm in one of those situations right now where we have 5 regions. The region president is not convinced that what we're trying to put forth is worthy of putting forth, and I've been able to get commitment for funding, like $4.5 million of funding.
Wow.
To be able to stand up this call center model in California, which centralizes the whole process so that emergency departments, wherever a patient walks in, that they'll have access to a behavioral health professional that will do the right thing.
Wow.
That will get them assessed appropriately and pointed in the right direction, and do it much quickly and more efficiently than we currently do it. Because right now, average length of stay in an ED for a mental health patient, regardless, is 12 hours plus. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I go into an emergency room. I can't stand being in for 2 or 3 hours. Imagine
5 minutes. I want to run.
Yeah. Imagine if your first entry into exposure into a mental health system is you're in crisis. You end up in an ED. You get thrown in a corner, ignored, and then maybe locked up, like you're almost going to jail.
Explain ED. Am I missing
emergency department?
Emergency department. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, if that's your first exposure, no wonder people can't.
And they go back out. It's easier to survive out there.
It's good, either that or they get discharged and it's good luck to you. You know,
that's why our streets are full.
Well, if you're alcoholic, my type.
Yeah.
Well, it's not only that; it's the mental health. I mean, here's the thing, and Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there's a lot of people on the street that don't have abuse problems, right?
Right.
They're just mentally
sick. There's a lot of people that have mental health issues that were brought about by our drug and alcohol issues.
Yes.
So you got all that to decipher.
Yeah, and they're out there. A lot of veterans, which I'm kind of partial to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. The prevalence of serious mental illness. I'm talking about bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, things like that. It's about 2 to 3% of the population in general. Okay, they cost our health system about 80%. They contribute about 80% of the cost of our health system.
Wow.
And those are the people that are out on the street homeless that are, like you say, they may or may not have a substance use disorder. They do. They're trying to self-medicate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have worked with that, and I've been, I've worked as an acute psychiatric nurse for a lot of years, and started programs here and there and this and that. I mean, talk about this program giving you the ability to have compassion for other people. That, and for me, it's like, I remember where I was 30 some odd years ago, and I think about, I almost got thrown away, and I think about, who else are we throwing away out there?
Yeah.
And it is. And I always tell my colleagues is, if this was your mother, brother, sister, a family member, would you? And sometimes their answer is yes, because they were such a drain on their life that,
it's hard.
I mean, you said, Paul, what I was thinking. You went from living on the streets. I mean, you have, in your position right now, you have 2 different experiences. You have the experience of the people you're helping, and you have the educational experience and the admin experience. I mean, what you have is a trifold.
He has everything.
Trifold.
That's why God put him there.
And you said it just perfectly. I almost got thrown away.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you how many people were telling me the right things.
Right.
Or they had the right answers, but you haven't lived what I lived. And when I finally sat down with Jay,
Yeah. But Paul, it took something for you. It took your moment of clarity for you not to be allowed to be thrown away too. I mean, when you sat in that AA meeting and you heard that guy speaking with the filters stuck in his teeth, you had that moment of clarity to go, yes, I got to go this other direction.
It's. I think that the issue was I was in so much pain. I was in so much
mental pain.
Mental pain.
I believe on Saturday morning men's meeting there was a young man who shared that alcoholics and humans in general, we move with the speed of pain.
Yeah.
And I believe I've said that on this podcast many times.
He actually said it?
I said it, you dork.
Yeah.
I was getting to that point, you dork.
I know. That's what's I got a lot of Rob-isms. Paul's been around me for 14 years now. He knows about a lot of Rob-isms.
And you're another person that I've gotten inspiration from. I clearly remember you walking into that meeting when the Saturday morning was over next to the insurance place and telling me that you had cancer. And I was just like, I was devastated. I was like, is he going to be around?
Right.
A year or 2 from now. And then
I'm glad he is.
When I saw you come back and I heard what you had gone through and the fact, the one thing I clearly remember you telling me is that I'm going to take this experience and I'm going to use it to help other people when I come. And you didn't say if, you said when I come through it. And I was like, that's faith, brother. I mean, that is just absolute.
And I get calls from my radiation Dr. GY when hey Rob, he always gives my phone number out to people who want to know.
So Paul, on your recovery, so you never went through a rehab, you never went through anything like that.
You walked just right in, baby.
Walked right in.
Yeah. And I probably should have, because knowing what I know now, it was probably medically dangerous because I was, at my finest, I was drinking a fifth of liquor and a case of beer every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a lot of alcohol.
Yep. Yeah. That's when I finished. That's where I was at. Yeah. So going forward, if there's somebody out on the streets and you're living in that street, looking at that, give some advice to somebody.
I can't give advice. Okay. I can share my experience drinking home.
Okay.
And one of the things I've learned over the years is that I know for me and many people I've worked with is that you're not ready until you're ready.
Right.
Right. And to try and convince somebody, I mean, the big book, and I really love the stories about how the whole program started, about one alcoholic helping another. And Bill Wilson coming to realize the spiritual component of this thing and all of that. But you stop and think about all the people that they tried to help that didn't make it.
Yeah, you don't hear about those as much, right? You don't. And it's a sad truth, right?
What is something that we always talk about? That we joke, kind of, because it's so frustrating. But Paul, many times on this podcast, because we try to find out. What started this whole thing was his friend whose son committed suicide. And
no. He overdosed.
I'm sorry, he overdosed, and Larry's the father's just kicking himself, and Larry's trying to break down what the addict, the alcoholic, and help them understand. But I'm trying to come up with, which there's not a certain word. Afraid, when you see someone who really needs this, and they're almost there. I mean, if there was a spray we could develop, it's called incomprehensible to more. You could spray it, and that would give them that final kick before they had to go, just to get. But you can't. Until they're in enough pain,
right? And I think that's when I hear people say, well, and I say it all the time too. They're not going to do anything until they're ready, right? What's sad is how people will go all the way to the end and never be ready, right? They'll just die, but they were never ready.
But then there are some people that come in and the bottom came up and hit them. Right. They didn't have the experiences that we did. They didn't get to where your body's not processing.
But it goes right back to what you said. It took one click for me. Right, for my moment of clarity to come in, it took some guy with. I could be wrong, but it took a guy with filters in his teeth for you to kind of go, oh shit, I don't, or the old man screaming out of the trailer, going, am I going to be there? Right, these little things, and it's and that's
these little seeds that got planted,
the little seeds, right,
and they get watered.
And I want to know. I asked more about that, and somebody said here just a while back. Somebody came in, they went back out drinking. I want to know why, right? Why? What were you thinking?
Well, it's usually if they had some, let us Paul this, because he's been, 35 years now, right? Sober?
30, going on 37.
37. Right. So Kim and Scott are right at the same. Mm-hmm. For me, at 14, every time I heard someone who's had, they did the work, they've had a spiritual awakening as a result of steps. Life got good usually.
Right.
They quit doing the big three. They quit talking to their higher power, coming to meetings, fellowshipping, working with others. You start doing those things, and then eventually, this sounds good.
Right.
What have you seen, Paul?
That's the thing that really scared me when COVID came along, and I heard all these people is, I'm not doing a Zoom meeting, and I'm like, what happened to going to any lengths?
Right.
What happened to being willing to go to any lengths? I get it. There were some people that also, and I'm one of those. We were gathering at Jimmy's house in person, outdoors.
Yeah.
And having worked in healthcare, I have a lot of respect for, I saw a lot of my colleagues, nurses, that had to work and be traumatized by going to work and dealing with death every single day, massive death. It's like combat zone death. And people being so hard-headed that it was like, they listen to and they're influenced by just garbage that's coming across the television, telling them what to believe and what to think. And I'm sitting there talking to these doctors that are going, well, like the vaccine is, I haven't seen anybody grow two heads yet, and also verifying data through facts that the people that are dying that are coming to the hospital are people that absolutely refuse to accept the fact that, yes, this is a killer disease that is killing people left and right. And no, I'm not going to get that back. Those were the people that were dying in our hospitals for the longest time.
And at this time, I'm going through cancer at the same time.
Yeah.
Which was.
And you're having to go into those hospitals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just, I mean, to me, it was like the world got turned upside down, but I understand that. That's mass hysteria. That's, all this other stuff that plays into this. But to me, it was, and this is the thing, like to your point, no matter what's going on anytime, anywhere, are you, that was the thing that my sponsor kept doing. Are you willing to go to any lengths to get this? Is the pain bad enough? The difference between me and somebody that doesn't make it is I made a decision that I didn't want to be in that pain, and largely because I'm just a wuss. I don't like pain. I hate it, and having to think that I'm just going to go on living like that over and over, day after day after day, like Groundhog Day.
But you've never left. You've came into the rooms, and like I heard you share Saturday morning, because Scott was sitting across from you. Guys came in '88, but you've never, because you shared with the gentleman that was chairing the meeting, a good friend of mine, sponsored me for a little bit because he had 6 more months. He was 6 months ahead of me. But he went a different route, and he went to church. He just left the meetings and went to church. Got drunk. Yeah, got drunk
after 20 years.
Not 14 years or 13 years.
I don't get that. To me,
Paul shared he's never left.
The thing is that what was drilled in my head in the very beginning was that I was an alcoholic, and I had to accept that fact. And the whole thing about powerlessness was that I could never understand why I couldn't stop. It was like, what's going on with me? The people around me, you guys have figured it out, and you stopped drinking. For some reason, I can't. I can't explain it. I don't know what. This was explained to me by a nurse that I worked with along the way. She used to describe this. This is an obsession of the mind, an allergy of the body to repeat the experience of intoxication until we're dead. And that was the best explanation I've ever heard.
She took the doctor's opinion and just came, beautiful.
And that was it. It was an obsession of the mind and an allergy of the body to do just that. And I couldn't break it. I didn't have and somehow, when I'd come to meetings, it was like, well, the answer's here. I just can't figure out how to get it. But that's one of the reasons why I kept coming back was that I was listening. I heard enough of okay, I know this can happen. Will it happen? I clearly remember sitting in a meeting at about 6 months sober, coming to the realization that obsession had been lifted.
Wow.
Took you that long.
It took me that long.
You fought.
And because and I don't know if it's a character. I don't want to say character, but just all of us have so many different experiences, the way that we're raised, the only things that I know for a fact are the things that I have experienced myself. Other than that, it's a belief, it's an opinion. If I'm hearing it from you, I'm trusting that what you're telling me is the truth. I never trusted anybody to tell me the truth about anything. But when I came to meetings and I started listening, I knew you were telling me the truth because you were telling my story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And why would you hear that guy across the room who about to share about his chicken if it wasn't? You ain't gonna share that. That shit went to the grave for some of us.
Yeah, it's funny. I went on a call yesterday. I was telling you this guy was he was saying some stuff, and then I went right back after saying some stuff. He's like, "Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, well, we all been there, right?" I hear people say this now, the final. I had a final before I went up to the room, if we're all at a conference or something. I ain't going to have a final. Motherfucker, my final went on all night long. It went on for about 12 years, my final did.
Yeah. So. Final.
Yeah, so, Paul, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, people talk about the first drink. I laugh and say, I couldn't figure out how to take the last drink.
For sure. No, I could not. I had to be forced to take that last drink, right? I had to do on the Librium. I had to be forced to take it. I would have went on drinking. I would have be dead.
I couldn't because my body stopped processing liquor. So I was at a crossroads.
I was fighting through it. I was just going to continue until I was dead, until my moment of clarity hit me, in the kitchen down here. And I was like, nope, I'm done.
Well, and then second one.
My second one about 28 days later.
In Chris's office.
Yeah, about 20 days later is when 28 days. My obsession got lifted about day 20 of my in Maynard's. I literally felt it leave my body. I literally was sitting in Chris's office.
And mine was on my ass in my hallway crying when I told my sister I'm an alcoholic. Right. However, I still had to deal with the isms. Right.
Those came a little later.
Yeah, I'm still dealing with those.
Those came through. Oh yeah.
I don't think they leave.
No. Step 10 helps us with that one.
Yep.
All right, Paul. Anything else you want to add?
No, man. I really appreciate you having me.
I love your story. I love your story. What?
Because the young lady who's almost a doctor.
Dr. Barry, we talked about that. Yeah. I'm calling her Dr. Barry as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, she's Dr. Barry, but having her, because she's got what knowledge like
love
Paul
to have
does.
The two of them back together.
I was thinking the whole time, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, I'd love to have you.
We had her on once, Paul, right before she was.
She's like, I was telling him about Dr. Barry right before he came on. And I just spoke to her about 6 weeks ago, and she was 6 weeks from getting her graduation, her doctorate. So I think she's done now. I'm going to reach out to her. Yeah, I'd love to get that back in. We got some great shows getting ready to start coming here. We're going to talk about it next week. You guys will hear a little bit about what's getting ready to come on. Paul's going to come back, and we're going to work through a topic together. We got a listener, Mr. Hart, from Denver. He's
anonymity, dipshit.
I didn't. I said Mr. Hart.
I dropped his name last time. I dropped his name last time anyway. It doesn't matter.
It's all right.
Sorry, Jim. Screwed you.
He's been sending us some emails. He's actually going to come down. He's excited. We're going to talk about this next week. Anyways,
I need your help.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back. We'll be back.
All right.
Oops. There we go.
All right. Thanks.
No closing.
It's there. Thank you for joining us today.
We hope you learned something today that will help you.
If you did not, come back next week and we'll try again.
If you like what we heard, give us a 5-star review. If you don't like what you heard, kiss my ass. You can't say that, can you? Anyway, if you don't like what you heard, go ahead and tell us that too. We'll see what we can improve. We probably won't change nothing, but do it anyway.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Come back next week and hopefully something will be different and something will sink in. Take care.
This has been Recovery Unfiltered.